All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Kevin Hoover. Kevin, welcome. It is so awesome to have you here today, man.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to be here as well.
Yeah, and I got to share just a little bit of background on this. I know I was telling you this before we hit the record button. Uh, I've been stalking you on Facebook for a while and watching your story, and I'm a family guy too. I've got 7 kids. We do have a special needs daughter that we adopted. She's 11 now. We adopted her when she was 3, and so there's a whole lot of like your story that you without even knowing me, you have been such an inspiration, and you and your son and your family, and what's interesting is I started doing this podcast well over a year ago. This has been hands down the most rewarding thing I've done in my business career of 27 years, and yet I didn't think to reach out to you for whatever reason. But there's this guy, Andrew Ailman, he's got this big email list, and I'm on his list, and he helps put podcasters in touch with potential guests. And not too long ago, you were one of the guests that he highlighted, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Kevin, I was all over it. I'm filling out his form, and so here we are.
Here we are. I love that. I love that so much.
And I am just really excited to have this conversation with you, Kev, because I just know for me to be able to help facilitate more people finding out about you and what you do, and just hearing your story, I'm just excited for that. And so,
thank you.
What I'll do is I'll just start by turning it over to you to share, set a little bit of context here, share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about what you do. And we'll just kind of start there, Kevin.
Sounds good. I think we'll start here and move backwards. Currently I'm the founder and coach at Next Crest Coaching, and I work with leaders in business so that they can continue to be good leaders in business, without suffering burnout, stress, or fatigue or anything else. And I like that work because I think it's important. I'm a dad, you're a dad. I think it's important that our kids come up with positive leaders in the business world so that we can keep inspiring innovation and change and positive cultures and things like that. So that's kind of why I do it. Before that, I was 15 years in corporate hospitality, working for companies like Hilton Worldwide and Starwood and some big restaurant organizations across the country. Then I went into entrepreneurship and started a photography business at the absolute time when iPhones were having really great cameras. And so it was a very short-lived career in photography. But even that skill served me best. And that's kind of what I do professionally. I've been married for 10 years and I have a son. He's a wonderful little boy. He's 7 years old now. Probably the biggest inspiration in my life. And we'll talk about him for sure. I have reconnected with nature recently. So we've been traveling quite a bit, and I'm kind of really into this zone now of like really helping other people, but also connecting with who I really am and connecting with what I really like.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Well, now that we've got just a little bit of context set here and stuff, well, I'll reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners, and we'll shift gears just a little bit. So, have you ever met or been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not even be possible if not for this person or persons? And Kevin, I'm just really excited to dig into this and explore this and just have you share your story and your experience around this.
Thank you. It's a big question, and it's one that I know the answer to immediately. It's my son. My son's name is Baxley, and when he was born, he's 7 now. And when he was born, I was excited to be a dad, as I feel like most people who are excited to be a dad would be. You want to have a good relationship with your kids, and you want to do the best and provide and all that thing. So I was working in real estate at the time when he was born. And I was doing pretty well. Wasn't killing it, but I was doing pretty well. Food was on the table. We had house and cars, and all the things. And then I started coaching, and I was coaching for about a year. So I was running coaching and real estate. So I was working, and I was completely the dad that was at the soccer field watching the game out of one eye, looking at his phone with the other, wondering if the deal's going to go through. I was there, but I wasn't there. And so I remember very specifically, working 6, sometimes 7 days a week, and I was happy. No one was suffering. My health wasn't suffering. My relationships weren't necessarily suffering, but I was working a lot, spending a lot of time keeping the business afloat. In 2019, so my son was 4, decided he wanted to play soccer, and soccer for 4-year-olds it's just fun. It's just so fun. There's little competition, everyone's supportive, and it's just a really fun environment. But so we played soccer one Saturday, and my son started to feel a little ill, tummy ache. And so most parents, when they're 4 and you get a tummy ache, it's like, what'd you eat? Clearly you've consumed something. Well, fast forward about 6 days later, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong in his tummy. And so we went in for a series of scans to kind of scan his abdomen and see what was going on. And the doctor scheduled that appointment for like 7 a.m. on a Friday. By 11 a.m., we were getting on a life flight. My son was in total kidney failure, and there was a tumor in his abdomen about the size of a softball. And we weren't prepared for that. 6 days earlier, we were playing soccer, and I was on my phone, and I was running the deal, doing the business, all the stuff that you do. And so it kind of turned our world upside down, and in a very, very small amount of time. So we put my son and my wife on a helicopter, and he was in pretty critical condition. It was pretty urgent. Got him into ICU. The next 8 days were a lot of waiting and keeping him stable and making decisions and adjusting and all the things you can imagine. And we didn't realize at the time how delicate the situation was. Looking back now, it was a very delicate situation, masterfully handled by our medical team and our friends and family. But it was that was the point where business changed, life changed, relationships changed, everything shifted in a matter of, if you can think about it, if you wake up on a day and you go to work, and by the time you eat lunch, your entire life is different. That's how fast it came about. So there's no like, oh, I see it coming, let me prepare, it happened that fast. So we finally got our diagnosis and our protocol, and over the next 12 months of our treatment, we were going to be out of town for 4 months. We weren't even going to be home. So I was in a real estate business, so it's very difficult to sell real estate when you're not in the place where you sell real estate. So I was lucky enough that I had to pivot a little bit, and it went from, most of my production went down to zero. I had a few referrals here or there, but that part of the business, which was a bulk of our income, went to nothing. And I had this coaching business that was moderately successful, so I really had to lean on that because I could do that from anywhere. And all the while I'm looking at my son, I'm watching him fight for his life. And so I took some time off, actually, as you can imagine, to kind of let the dust settle. And my wife and I talked for a long time, and we got some advice from friends and other people in the cancer world, other parents, other entrepreneurs, just anybody that we could talk to about what do we do now. We did. And so what we decided that I would close the real estate business because I couldn't focus on it all the time. If someone sent me something and it was urgent, I probably wasn't in the headspace to deliver it back when they needed it. And it wasn't fair to the clients. It wasn't fair to my colleagues. So I just kind of had to say, hey, I've got to bow out of this for the time being. So my wife and I decided I was going to work a day and a half a week.
Okay.
And I was going to do coaching. And because the bills came in, that helicopter flight, we got the bill for that, and it was $60,000. And so, and we have insurance and all that, but they still make it a point to send you the bill. And so you see, and so we definitely had to work. And I was watching my son, and he was just fighting and fighting and smiling the whole time. He didn't like ouchies, so when there was a needle involved, he had what a 4-year-old would. He responded in a way a 4-year-old would respond to that. But for the most part, he was in the moment. And he was happy, and he was in this luckily he was young enough he understood but didn't fully understand what was going on. And there was this one moment where we were sitting in his hospital bed. We were waiting on the nurses, and I used to kneel down on his bed. He and I would just talk, the way a dad and a 4-year-old talk. How you feeling? What are you doing? What are you thinking? Hold daddy's hand, those kind of things. And there was a moment where at that time I didn't have any tattoos at all. I'd wanted one for a while, but this was where I was really thinking about the changes we've been through and the fight my son is on, and this means something. And so I leaned down the back of his bed, and I said, "Hey, Bax, Dad wants to get something to really remember this time by. Like this, these are important moments, and I really treasure these moments that I get to talk to you. And I'm wondering if I should get a word kind of put on my skin. He knew what tattoos were, tattooed on my skin. And I said, should I get, I think you're an incredible survivor. Should I get survive? Should I get your name? Should I get faith? Should I get, what should I get? And I was being sincere. I didn't know what I wanted to get, but I knew I wanted to remember this pivotal moment in time for the rest of my life. And so his 4-year-old brain, he looks up at me and he said, he's kind of thinking and he's kind of hearing what I'm saying and kind of deciding if he thinks that's the word or not. And he looks up at me, he says, "Get trucks, Daddy. I like trucks." So I'm thinking, get survive, get faith, get believe, get, whatever. And he says, "Get trucks, Daddy. I like trucks." And I just laughed. I just started laughing. I was like, that's such a 4-year-old, my son response, like just completely clever, and so I just let it go. And I told my wife and my sister-in-law, and then a couple weeks later, I mean, it was a long time. It wasn't like instant. A couple weeks later, I was thinking, and I was like, I should do it. I should get trucks, so I did. So I know you can't see it on the podcast, but I did get trucks on my arm. And one of the things I learned from that was I was focused on really the struggle, and I was focused on what I can't do and what we can't do. And if I'd gotten what I thought I wanted to be permanent on my skin, I would always look back and think of the hard time. If I'd gotten survive, I would think of the sickness and the nausea and the headaches and the staying up late and the smell of the hospital. I would have thought of that. But now I look down and I see trucks and I just laugh. I'm smiling. I'm like, that's amazing. He likes trucks. Like that's the perspective shift that really happened at that time. And that impacted my business because I realized over the next 70 weeks, I worked a day and a half a week and tripled my business. I replaced my real estate income with coaching, working a day and a half a week from a hospital, a hotel, a park, a car, everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, all this life that I've been missing, I've been allocating 6-7 days a week for 30 years, 20 years to achieve what I'm now achieving in a day and a half because I've got the eyes of this little boy and I've got something important to be there for.
Yeah.
I was like, this is an incredible, I hate that I have to learn it this way, but
yeah,
this is what I'm learning. And so the truck story is really the starting point of the rest of the lesson. Yeah. And it really was that, I hold Bax in my arms and he rubs it and I put his name under it so that he learned how to spell his name by the tattoo on my arm. So he was seeing Baxley and just rubbing his hand over it before he fell asleep. And it just created this incredible bond between us. And I always joke with people, I say, there's one person that can get me to do the craziest things in the world, and it's my son. And he's going to tell a story one day about how he got his dad to tattoo trucks on his arm.
Yeah, right.
And he'll tell that story. But yeah. The boot camp that he helped me see was how precious life is and how we over allocate time to do things that don't really matter. Do we need another meeting about the meeting? Does this need to be a meeting, or can it be an email? Can that be an email, or does it need to be a phone call or a text? Can we Zoom? We waste so much time. And I was thinking about how much I was missing. And then, and so we take all that. And of course, my son beat cancer. He was a trooper. He fought with all his heart, and he's such a wonderful kid. Didn't complain very much. Most of it was terrible for him, but he just kind of kept a good attitude, and we laughed a lot and danced a lot. And so when he got the all clear from the doctors, I kind of sat down with my wife and I said, what a shame it would be to go back to the way we were. Like, what a shame it would be for me to go back working 6 days a week, knowing what I know now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What What a shame it would be to not use the experiences we just been forced to go through and not try to help other people. Like, what, we got to figure this out. We got to figure out how to move forward with the lessons that we learned that he's taught us. And so that was really when everything started to get really exciting for us, and we did some really bold things. But when you talk about a relationship that completely and changed and put everything in a 180 rotation in your life, I'm regretful that it had to be my son getting cancer, but that little boy in his fight taught me more about productivity, leadership, time management, empathy, positive culture. I mean, you name it. There's not a subject I haven't been able to bring him into and say, here's what he taught me about that.
Yeah.
And so that's the relationship that really turned it on its end for me.
Yeah. Man, that is so huge. And even just like what you shared about the productivity part of going from the kind of hours that you used to work, which, you know what, most people wouldn't think that was uncommon at all. That is totally
No,
normal.
absolutely.
That is totally normal. But yet, because of this incident and this now changing set of circumstances, you had a reason to switch things around, and you discovered that, like, all that time that I was investing, it's not required.
Right.
And man, that is like so powerful. That is so powerful. And like, I can totally relate to so much of that, because in my previous business, uh from the outside looking in, people would say, "Oh my gosh, Kevin, you got it all figured out." But yet, when we would go on vacation with the family, and if we were on a week-long vacation, well, there would be like 3 days in there that I'm going to work like 2 or 3 hours each of those days.
Yeah.
And my family always put up with that. And sometimes my wife would be like, it would be frustrating. And I always liked it when we went to Hawaii, because the time zone we were on, I could get up way early in the morning and work, and it was, and it felt better to me. But
Yeah.
now, in fact, we just got back. We just 2 weeks ago, we took a week-long vacation and went to Disneyland. And my wife and I and 13 of us, we took some of our kids who wanted to go with the grandkids and all that. And so 13 of us took that trip. And
Wow.
I spent zero time focused on work during that week-long trip.
Good for you.
I was 100% present for the family. And now I'm like, man, how I don't want it to be any other way.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
enjoy it being that way. They enjoy it being that way. And you know what? My clients, my partners, the people that I serve, they totally get it, because
Yeah.
they're totally cool with it too. And so okay, so now, after having had you share this, Kevin, so I am, I know that, like, I don't know if you knew of me, but, well, let me ask you, did you know of me? Like, before I shared what I shared with you this morning today, did you even know of me at all? Probably not.
I knew of you, but I didn't have a lot of time to research,
Okay,
to be
okay.
honest.
And that's what I'm getting at and
Yeah.
that's where I'm going with this question, because I believe that you are impacting a whole lot of people's lives because of what's happened. And you probably, you don't even, there's no way possible for you to know the real impact that you're having, because there's all kinds of people out there that haven't said anything, that are just kind of like following along on your journey, but they
Mhm.
are inspired and stuff, and they just haven't stepped up and said anything, but they're out there, and there's probably a lot of them. And what I just kind of want to dig into a little bit is, now that this set of circumstances did happen, and this
Mhm.
shift has taken place, and also this huge shift in the relationship that you have with your son Baxley and stuff.
Mhm.
What is one, or I mean, maybe two. I mean, just we'll just leave it at one. What is one thing that would have, that has led to a big impact that would have never happened if this set of circumstances with your son wouldn't have happened the way that they did?
Ooh, I think the single biggest impact that we had that my son led us to was our nonprofit, Hug Your People.
Okay.
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 So when when Baxley was diagnosed, he did not like wheelchairs at all for whatever reason. He just did not like wheelchairs. And so I said, great. I said, how do you, and we were going down to our first, we weren't even diagnosed yet. We were going down to our first CT and PET scans. And they brought a wheelchair in with, the attendant to wheel him down. And he said, I'm not riding that. And I was like, okay, well, we got to go. So what do you want to ride? He said, I want to go in a wagon. And he actually said, I want to go naked in a wagon. I was like, okay, well, so we started the, just taking him everywhere in a wagon because that's where he was comfortable. And we were in Jacksonville, Florida getting proton radiation. And we saw another mother. She was a single mom. And she saw us pulling our little collapsible beach wagon around. And she said, wow, that's handy. I mean, your dad's, when you bring kids, it's got all the stuff, the iPads, the snacks, the drinks, the sweaters, the blankets, the jackets, the stuffed animals, all the stuff. And she said, wow, that'd be handy. And my wife just in a reply said, I'll buy you one. We'll get one for you. And so we went to one of the retailers in Jacksonville and bought a wagon similar to ours for her and gave it to her. And then probably a couple days later, another parent said, wow, that's handy. I'd like one. So we bought them one. And fast forward, that was in 2020. Fast forward now, we've delivered wagons to over 500 families.
Wow. Wow.
So it all started with, my son saying, putting his stance up saying, I don't want to ride in a wheelchair. Yep. I'd like to go in a wagon. It makes me feel safe. It makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel like a kid, whatever he was thinking. I'm sure he wasn't thinking all of that, but then we started seeing the signs of the usefulness of it. And we were like, well, what do? We got to act on this, and so we started an official 501c3 nonprofit, started taking donations and started delivering wagons, shipping them all over the country and delivering them personally and whatever else. And so we take a wagon and deliver it to a child who's fighting cancer with pillows, blankets, toys for their siblings. And that gives them their safe space to go into treatment. And my son, when he would go into treatment, sometimes would never get out of the wagon. He would receive chemo in the wagon.
Wow.
And just never get out. So the one thing, like if you talk about impacting people, it really, that was it. There's a whole lot of other things that go into that as far as our travels in the RV and everything like that. But it really is that one thing where it's, you don't ever think in our lifetime that a collapsible beach wagon will be your legacy. It'll be the way, right? It'll be the thing that people remember you by, so to speak, years and years from now, hopefully. But for us, it was like Bax showed us that. He was like, here you go. This is useful for me. It'll be useful for other kids. And anytime you would see kids in the hospital in wagons, it's like they were a motorcycle gang. They'd give thumbs up and high five, didn't even know each other. Like if you were in a wagon and you're a kid in cancer treatment, you're giving high fives to those other kids and giving them a thumbs up. And it really created this really special movement that I was so honored to be a part of. And it all started with my son's awareness.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. It is really, and starting this podcast, I mean, I have, realized a long time ago that as an entrepreneur, at least for me, relationships are the most valuable asset that I possess. Everything else stems from that. And doing this podcast has reiterated that over and over and over, that just solidified that lesson. And just, and even hearing you share your story and your experience today, and that's what I want to have come from this, is anybody who gets the opportunity to hear this conversation, that they're inspired by what you've shared. And it inspires them to place an intentional focus on creating more meaningful relationships in their own lives. And Kevin, for anybody listening to this that is just like, man, I really like that Kevin guy. I love the way he shows up. How can they find out more about the work that you guys are doing?
Well, we're not very secretive in in our world. We're pretty out there. Social media is a great place. Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn is a good place. Our website, the nonprofit website is hugyourpeople.org. My business website is mynextcrest.com. And any of those outlets will be just wonderful outlets to reach out and get in touch with us from.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share? I know you mentioned if you had anybody else you wanted on, I want to make sure. I mean, because we're not pressed for time or anything. We got more. If
Yep.
I just want to leave it open for whatever is feeling right for you in this moment, Cal.
I'll accept that. I think something I'm feeling right now, for people who are out there, we're looking at relationships and how it impacts our lives and things like that. One of the things that I'll encourage you to do, is it's really easy to look at relationships up the food chain, meaning finding a mentor or someone who's higher up in business, higher up in spirituality, higher up in physical health. It's really easy to look up and find a relationship there that will help you. What I would challenge you to do is to look completely around you. My hero came from a 4-year-old,
Yeah.
someone who had very little life experience at that point, as far as I knew at the time, but was able to teach me more than someone who had lived 2 lifetimes. And so I think what I'm being led to say is, don't overlook the most unsuspecting hero in your life.
Yeah.
Give them time, devote time, develop the relationship. There's a fair exchange in relationships, not just find someone who can teach you how to do the thing that you want. The more you contribute to a relationship, the more you'll discover that you get from the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I want to just really, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart and your experience, because I know this is going to impact a lot of people's lives, and just really appreciate having the conversation, Kevin. So thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin. If I could say, I do a lot of these, and this is world class. Like, you really, this show, the interview, the care you put into it, your sincerity, it's really been an honor. Thank you so much.
You bet.